welcome back Bill Clayman.
Good morning, Data Center World. Oh, look at these wonderful faces. It's so good to see everybody once again. Just got to make sure my hat's up a little bit so the lighting can see me. Hey, is everybody okay from last night? Everybody here? Everybody's pretty sober? Okay, everybody's good? Good. Everybody's calm. We had a good night last night. Everyone's back here. Good. Got a bunch of smiling faces in the front row. I love it. Welcome back, everybody. We are still in Austin, and we had a really fun day yesterday. And we opened up our expo hall. Did you guys see that waterfall? I was like, wow, that's not dangerous around electrical equipment, but that's so cool. They had a little 3D light in there, and there's like a arm that goes up and down. We had a rack and stack challenge. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Wonderful keynote presentation yesterday. I certainly learned quite a bit from Bertrand as far as robotics and AI and using data to bring up capacity way faster than we were able to before. We had our first ever data center build summit, and my goodness, I got some wonderful feedback from people. They're like, every session gave me a little nugget, a little gold piece of nugget that I can take back to my organization and do something cool with. So we're going to do that again next year, so be sure to check that out if you can. Our conference sessions were packed. I apologize for the standing room only crowd. You know, I mean, you got your steps in, or you're standing in at least your watch won't beep at you. And I'm excited to kickstart this day it's going to be once again very, very fun. So first up, we're going to actually have a really wonderful presentation here. I can see Jane just waiting behind. Data Center World and AFCOM are excited to bring back the Lifetime Achievement Award. Actually, it's a very special one, and this industry honors a leader that has really made significant contributions to our industry, demonstrating mentorship, dedication to sustainability and promotion of innovative technologies, and the process of making our data center industry absolutely wonderful. I'm excited about this. I'm not going to get emotional. I'll let the people up here do it. To announce the 2023 winner, I'd like to invite my friend, Jane Shea, to the stage. And Jane is a leader at sales at Alliant Energy. Jane, coming up here.
Hi, good morning, everyone. We got a really good crowd. Thanks, Bill, for the introductions. I've been holding this in for a long time, so I'm really going to get this burst out here. This person would describe themselves to be bold, passionate, witted, determined. This person has a special place in my heart. I look up to them, and I feel nothing but respect and pride to call them my mentor and my dear friend. They have a huge heart and gives big loves. They love our industry dearly, and is committed to making waves and paving it forward. Among all the titles that they have held over the years as Chief Information Officers, international keynote speakers, podcasters, blogger, CTO, technical writer, and recently best-selling authors on Amazon Prime, hint, hint. Over the 40-year span of careers with global experiences on data center design, running and auditing data center consulting, and intelligent building. But most importantly, they're most proud of sharing with others about their journey in our industry. Our invisible industry that's a well-oiled machine that's keeping the internet running, keeping our 5-year-olds happy when they go into Starbucks. This industry needs more talents and diversity more than ever, and this person wholeheartedly championed for that. They would encourage the heck out of you to try something new and that you're scared of, such as public speaking. Overcoming challenges is an overstatement. Finding new challenges is how they breathe. They are a magnet that attracts love for life. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Data Center World 2023 Lifetime Achievement Award to Carrie Getz. to be reckoned with and an inspiration for all of us. She asked us to own our voices and paving it forward. I love you.
I love you too.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm kind of almost speechless, which for those of you that know me will know that's probably a crock. But I honestly, this means so much to me. You guys have no idea. This industry, I think, is one of the longest ongoing apprenticeships we've ever had, and we all learn from each other. I would be nowhere without everybody else in this room. So paying that forward to me, to the next generation, is important. I think that we all have a responsibility to make sure that everything that we support, that we drive, is kind. It works for everybody, not just the people we agree with. It works for everybody because we're the adults in the room. Well, some of us maybe, right? And so I encourage you as you go forward and you bring additional people on, think about diversity not as an appearance. Think about diversity as a fingerprint. We need every fingerprint involved to make sure that technology works for us today and in the future. Thank you so much.
All right, it was wonderful to hear this talk from Jane and Carrie. Big congratulations to you. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story. I wasn't going to do this. I told her at dinner the other day. So some of you might know this. I'm from Ukraine, and when the war broke out in my home country, it was very hard. And so a couple days go by, and very difficult time with family out there and friends, and I get this box because Carrie asked for my address. I'm like, oh, I wonder what's in this thing. So I open it up. And inside is a s'mores kit. Literally, like you dip the s'mores, you make, everybody knows what s'mores are. What she didn't realize is that was extra special for me because when I came to America in the early 90s, that was actually one of the first treats that I had here in the United States was actually a s'more. So here I am crying, eating s'mores, like this is supposed to be happy. Carrie's a very thoughtful individual. I'm so honored to see you up there getting this award. Absolutely deserved, so congratulations again. All right. I've got my iPad here because I got a whole bunch of notes I want to make sure I read off. But I'm really excited to introduce this coming up keynote. These extraordinary leaders are uniquely qualified to talk about some of the most transformative trends that we've been seeing in our industry, and certainly things that are impacting our data center space. Specifically, we're going to explore how data, connectivity, new compute-heavy workloads are changing and modernizing us in data center infrastructure. And we'll also discuss how leaders can prepare for a much more connected and data-driven future, certainly. Help me welcome to the stage Garima Kochar, Shweta Saraf, and Rebecca Weekly. Big round of applause, everybody. This is nicer. All right. I feel like that was a very brief introduction and didn't do any of you justice. So let's start with you, Garima. If you can tell us a little about yourself and what you do, and then we'll just jump right into this. Go ahead.
Awesome. So my name is Garima Kochar. I work at Dell, and I'm part of the Chief Technology and Innovation Office. I'm a senior distinguished engineer there, and my focus is on high-performance computing and AI solutions. So what you would expect from a CTO team, pathfinding future technologies, architecting and designing systems for the future, talking about large supercomputers for HPC and AI.
Very cool. Thank you, Shweta.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shweta Saraf. I'm currently Director of Platform Networking at Netflix. What that means is when you play your favorite title, who's responsible for moving packets and making sure there's no latency? That's me and my team.
I knew that was going to happen.
And it will be amiss to not mention that before Netflix, I'll be 1 month into Netflix today. I spent 3.5 years at Equinix, where I was leading edge computing and edge networks and network modernization.
Very cool. Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Weekly. I am a VP of Hardware Systems Engineering at Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a security company that makes sure that everything that you do on the internet is better. So that's really what I focus on, and very much in the networking space as well.
Very cool, thank you. So it's fascinating, right? We've got the title up there, how blurring the lines, how connectivity, data, now ChatGPT are influencing the industry. I never thought I'd have an AI ChatGPT topic ever at Data Center World. And let's just try this out. Audience, how many of you have tried ChatGPT? Let me see your, okay, well, oh my gosh. So like everybody, so obviously connectivity, HPC, and our ability to connect all of this stuff and work with different kinds of solutions is important. So we've seen a massive GPT-generated elephant in the room, right? And obviously that data is being, unfortunately, sometimes generated by GPT. You know something's gone mainstream when South Park does an episode on it. So if anyone saw that episode, it is absolutely hilarious and spot on as well. We're learning more about the capabilities of this architecture in just a few short weeks. We're already seeing the impact on facilities and HPC certainly, and communications. Looking back at just these past few months, what's changed in your world? What have you seen? What new imperatives do data center leaders, certainly folks out there, what should they focus on? Shweta, let's start with you.
Great. So I want to start off with a story. The day ChatGPT launched, I was actually having dinner with some of the industry leaders. And it was kind of a historical moment because we were all anticipating how the future as we know it today is going to change in the next 10 to 20 years, right? But to reel it back in as to what it means for us who are in the business of running infrastructure, I think the first thing, the pace at which the software is changing is going to be dramatic. And that's going to force the issue of how fast can we innovate on the hardware. AI is not going to be treated just as a workload. It's going to be mainstream. So we need to design our data centers, the way we design our power, and how we use AI for everything. So it's not just how we run or deploy or train AI, it's also how you use AI to do your work more efficiently, how you plan your network monitoring with AI, AI ops, and things like that. And then lastly, I think it's going to evolve the next generation's thinking in terms of the human factor of AI, which I think is a big question mark. So I'll pass it on to Garima.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Garima, I'm definitely curious about your thoughts. I mean, you're the person working in high-density compute. What do you think, what should the leaders be focusing on?
Right. So, I mean, the trajectory of ChatGPT and large language models and foundational AI is the story here, right? Like how fast it's taken off, how everybody is able to talk about it now, and literally it's just a few months old. But I think what it means from a data center point of view or from a user point of view is not as significantly different as the trajectory we were already on. We were talking about dense computing, we're talking about high power systems, we're talking about how to manage thermals, heat and cooling, data center connectivity, all those pieces. And along with this, data security, telemetry, what do you need to do in the data center? So, whether you're running large language model workloads or generative AI workloads in general, or whether you're accommodating all the other workloads in the industry, I mean, I think it's that same trend line that we've been on. Like, to your piece of it, like Shweta, what you said, I mean, I fully agree. Like, AI is not a workload, AI is an algorithm. It's like, how do you use AI to solve a problem? AI is not the problem, AI is not the solution. The problems are what we know them to be, and AI is another type of algorithm, another type of method that you can apply to solve that. But to use AI, you need different techniques, you might need different infrastructure, that infrastructure has different requirements. And so, that's what it's about here.
Absolutely. Rebecca, from your perspective, what do you think should be focused on specifically? I mean, you work at Cloudflare, you see the vast packets of connectivity. What do you think is impacting the industry?
I agree with both of you, and I also think we've seen a fundamental change in the open source nature of generative AI and specifically large language models. And that is something that has completely transformed, even from January to now, what we need in the systems. So that's one area I would push on is when you think about generative AI, LLMs, the parameter scale that is happening is exponential. And so the computing requirements are exponential. So we've gone 10x in the training requirements, even than what we did before we started seeing transformer models. And that is very, very concerning as somebody who operates, a global network with over 700 sites. You're not going to have immersive cooling solutions in every place. That's not how smaller co-location facilities are operated. It's certainly not how ISP main offices are operated. So even in January of this year, I found myself, contemplating how do we scale with our network these kinds of solutions. And then in February, you saw Meta bring out Llama, which is an incredible solution that in some sense, I think leaked. I won't claim how I know or how we all know. But then Stanford picked that up in March, right? And they did work with Alpaca. And then the open source community came in and did Llama CPP, which made it 10x faster. And now we're starting to see through Microsoft research and Google research that we actually can take these open source models and we can infer from them with much smaller, focused models at much lower computing levels. So the Alpaca work brought it to just a single GPU to have similar accuracy to what's being done on these massive training systems. This is the most exciting thing as a person who operates a global network, as people who are operating data centers, that we all should realize just frickin' happened. Like, it just happened. And it's insane. I mean, you can make these models run on a TI calculator. Do we realize that that just happened? It means that the world that we are inheriting is now democratized, and democratized for intelligence, generalized intelligence, and what that means for education, for healthcare, for the personalization. It is an edge computing workload now in ways that I did not believe it could be in January. And that is the most exciting thing that happened, and I'm super psyched, if it's not clear.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing. Like, there was internet browser that broke the world. Then there was cloud and iPhone. Now, AI has existed for many years, but this is the time for AI to disrupt the world.
So it's 1999 and the internet's right around the corner, right? There was some crazy statistic that said that ChatGPT reached 1 million users in 5 days and 100 million 2 months after its launch.
Yep.
I was at a session yesterday where somebody mentioned, like, oh, this bill's just like Zoom during the pandemic. I'm like, I don't know, this doesn't feel like Zoom during the pandemic. It feels like, I mean, look at the hands that went up in this room alone as far as people using this kind of architecture. All right, let's kind of stay on this topic, but shift just a little bit, because I think this is going to be really interesting. So ChatGPT, right, all these large language models, what's been really fascinating is a lot of conversations that I've had with end users and enterprise organizations. They're like, we don't really want to deploy this in the cloud because we're concerned, are our models going to be trained against? Is it going to leak? So there's concerns about proprietary data, which actually brings me to the next big part of this discussion. Nobody yell at me. Cloud repatriation, cloud balancing, cloud maturity, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to get some angry tweets from this. I know it's a harsh term, so let's call it the Great Cloud Rebalancing, just so we make everybody happy. In our latest AFCOM, State of the Data Center report, I've said that word so many times. By the way, everybody has access to that report. Every single year we've asked that question, the majority of respondents have stated that they have seen a shift, a maturity, where people are moving workloads from the cloud to on-prem. Now, obviously, if you see the numbers, cloud computing is doing very well, but we have a further understanding of what needs to be living in the cloud and what should be on-premise. In fact, 83% are seeing cloud workloads repatriated to on-premise facilities. And what's fascinating is that these are ERP systems, Kubernetes clusters, DevOps. And with that in mind, what is the relationship between data center and the cloud? And Rebecca, let me start with you there.
So you sounded surprised that DevOps was the stuff that moves back, but to me, that's actually, it's the predictable workloads that are often done best and most efficiently in your own infrastructure, right? And Kubernetes clusters are perfect. They're multi-tenant, they're able to support, so you can really get full advantage of the hardware that you have in that kind of environment. Elastic compute, what the cloud is phenomenal at, is distribution, and it's phenomenal at unpredictable loads, things that are rapidly evolving. Areas like AI where you're experimenting, but you're not yet sure exactly what you're going to be doing. And you will definitely tune, you will definitely make changes, you will definitely iterate. So fundamentally, I think this is a hybrid world. That should be the hybrid world that we inherit. There are things that you can absolutely do with more economic advantage in predictable loads at home. And I think you're seeing incredible systems coming out that are more predictable, more useful, and have longer life. And those are great ways to have a more sustainable footprint and utilize the best of computing, and then leverage the cloud where the cloud is great. That would be, it's an and, it's not an or.
Exactly. Leverage the cloud where the cloud is great. I feel like just a few years ago when a developer would say, I need to deploy a Kubernetes cluster, the default answer is the cloud. Today, what you said is absolutely true. It's different. It's like, well, why in the cloud? Can we do this better on-prem? Right? Can we leverage the resources better? So very good point there. Garima, what are your thoughts as far as the relationship between data center and cloud today?
Right. So, I mean, I think there's no doubt that, hybrid multi-cloud is the way it's going to go, right? That's what customers are asking for. That's what the trend is. There's no doubt that everything we need to do needs to enable that. And the other piece of this, right, to your point about like all this data, like the biggest thing with generative AI right now is all the unanswered questions, right? Like, so you've tried ChatGPT, which is one consumer instance of what this looks like. And the very first thing you have to do is click through 3 screens which say, this is just informational, you can't use this for anything. Like, you're responsible for however you use this information. And if you try to ask it a question about an ache or a pain, it starts off by saying, I'm not a doctor, right? So it is to me a consumer toy product right now, very much in the exploration phase. And the trajectory is what we're all keeping an eye on, because 1 million users in 5 days, right? I mean, you can't blink. We're going to have new updates at the end of this panel, because everything we say will be outdated, that sort of thing. But what are the things that still need to be figured out, right? And that's the stuff that all of us need to figure out, and that's what the infrastructure and the environment needs to support, which is ethics, privacy, data security, your proprietary data leaking into the model and becoming available to other people. The piece that Rebecca talked about, which is you can take these public models and then fine-tune them or use prompt engineering methods to tailor them to your workloads. But what does that mean, and how do you do it in a manner that's follows any laws or regulations in different countries? Like, all of this stuff still needs to be figured out. But what all of this is going to require is still that harness around it, right? Like, what's the network? How are we gathering telemetry? How are we checking for zero trust architectures and security and privacy? Like, how do we know who's doing what, where, and when? In multi-tenancy environments, how do we restrict who has access to what? So I think those, that's the sort of stuff that, we've got to sort out between now and tomorrow. So
Well, you just told us not to blink tomorrow. Geez, tomorrow's like next year in this world.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good statement there. I love the idea of context. Like, understand the context of your workloads, your infrastructure, and how to deploy it between the two. I'm actually really excited about this level of maturity that we're experiencing between cloud and data center, because we are in this industry, we can ask deeper, more contextual questions. Shweta, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what this relationship today looks like.
Yeah, I think very deeply about this, because I went from building VM-based clouds, bare metal clouds, to operating data centers, to now being one of the biggest consumers of the cloud. Yeah. So it's been a whole circle and a whole journey, and I think you hit on a very important point of what are the factors where you decide what you deploy where and for what needs, like you touched upon. So with AI workflows, there is the training workloads and there's the inferencing workloads. Training workloads are CPU intensive. It makes sense for us to optimize cost and run them in places which are more core, whether it's cloud or your data centers. And then the edge workloads, the digital edge, as you will, is exploding, because AI inferencing cares about proximity, it cares about latency, it cares about your cost across your network, right? So it's smart to think of what does my hybrid cloud or multi-cloud strategy looks like, but also how do I put my workloads in the right place, to both of your points, so that you can design an architecture which will serve you when this whole thing explodes. So mine is a very network-centric view, but I think it's important to not rule out one thing or get too caught up into one thing, But think about the merits of what each one provides, and then your appetite to take the risk. Or if you're greenfielding, build it in a way where you can deploy anywhere, right? That will solve your problem. Then you have the optionality versus taking on the tech debt of moving workloads from one place to the other.
Thanks for making sure I can watch Stranger Things normally. You know, at the heart of all of this, and this is such an important conversation point, is data. I think it was 2012 when we crossed the zettabyte threshold in our data sphere, what do you want to call it? And by 2025, that's going to be 175 zettabytes generated by this stuff, like connected devices that we are all wearing. I'm going to read some of these really crazy stats that I pulled together just for this conversation. We generate, is this right? Wow, okay, 328.77 million terabytes of data daily, and around 125 zettabytes of data is going to be generated in this year alone. Here's the question: how do we as an industry adjust for all of this information? Obviously, ChatGPT is going to be a big part of that, but setting that aside, and obviously, from your perspective, how does HPC play a more prominent role here? How do we approach the conversation around things like connectivity? And as these data sets get more extensive, far more critical, and in some cases life-saving, I'm really curious to hear how do we wrap our heads around this, and what should we be doing fundamentally? So, Shweta, let me start with you with this.
Yeah, so I'm going to build on what I was saying with respect to digital edge and how do you design your network or your architecture, right? So specifically, I think there's value in thinking about interconnected ecosystems. How are you going to work with your partners, with your ISPs, with your NSPs, and also with your cloud providers? And what does proximity and location mean to that equation when you're moving these zettabytes of data across, right? And the other thought I want to leave you all with is efficiency. Like, this is the world where everybody cares about efficiency. It's no longer like we will pay the bill later. I mean, we have to solve engineering problems from an angle of how do we drive efficiency in everything we do. So for example, half a rack of servers can run 200 Netflix streams, and they draw only 5.6 kilowatt of power, which is less than your LED bulb.
Oh,
So
say that again?
200 streams of Netflix data of video can be drawn from, can be run through half a rack of servers, which can only draw 5.6 kilowatt of power. That's the kind of efficiency. Another way to think about it is when you are going from one browser to other, one device to other, we came up with something called faster than light, which is kind of banking on CDN, proxy, as well as DNS technologies, and making them work in a way which is never known before so that you can actually deliver that kind of workloads, that kind of data over the network. So I think it's going to really drive a lot of innovation when it comes to network infra storage, and the key drivers are going to be efficiency and just the scale out and scale in of this.
Yeah, efficiency, and I guess as a subset, sustainability, right? I mean, if you're creating an architecture that's so streamlined, 200 streams consuming 5-point-something kilowatts. Kilowatt hours of energy. I mean, that's extraordinary. And then you mentioned how you distribute this. Actually, Rebecca, I want to bring you into this. How do we wrap our hands around all of this data? I know you mentioned CDNs here. What should we be thinking about with this just influx of data in our space?
So a couple of different thoughts came to mind as you were speaking, because it's a very similar problem, right? As you're distributing data of all sorts, and a compute platform as well as a streaming platform as well as, these different workloads, one of the reasons why you can get to 200 streams in 5.6 kilowatts is that you are able to optimize your footprint for the workload that you're doing, right? It's a content distribution network. It is actually to ensure that your Stranger Things comes through wherever you are, right? And that it does it with a performant fashion. And it's because it's taken on a SASE network approach, right? So you're allowing somebody to log in as themselves. They're saying, I am who I am, and therefore I have access to my account through that authentication to this access. And so going to a more digitally native approach for networking for your user authentication flow, your security model, and then to your workloads is a critical part of how we can actually solve these problems in a sustainable fashion. The other thing that you touched on that I really feel incredibly strongly about is the need for standards. You didn't actually say this, I said that. But when you mentioned, talking about working with the different cloud companies, working with the different ISPs, this is where standards have to be in place. Because if we do not have something in how we're doing our rack design, how we're approaching our kilowatts of racks, the regulations in those domains, the data sovereignty rules in those domains, how you can actually attest to the sustainability of your design and your flow and your footprint, your thermal and your temperature regulations, even as totally nerdy as it's going to sound, because it's how I do my day, like OpenBMC and Redfish, and how we actually are looking at the telemetry from the system to validate those conditions so that we can actually operate effectively across that footprint. Those are the problems that keep me up at night, and the problems that one company alone cannot solve, should not solve, because we can't, right? You cannot operate. In our case, we're operating in over 200 different countries. I need regulations to be as consistent as humanly possible. I want to make sure that I can be absolutely aligned to jurisdictional requirements, especially with data, especially as we move to something like generative AI, and we're actually trying to do inference on these models at the edge with respect to the local regulations. So there's so much work that we need to do together as an industry to actually ensure that we can operate these systems, that we can actually run in a consistent fashion in order to be able to secure for our users their privacy.
I'm going to ask you a quick follow-up question because, Shweta, you asked some Grima. I promise to get to
This is great. I'm listening.
I figured this would happen. I had a few questions. I knew throughout the discussion we'd have a few extra things to talk about. You talked about, Shweta, you talked about the impact at Netflix on how you've been able to control those streams. And thank you for sharing those metrics. They're extraordinary, and they're great, too. At Cloudflare, what have you seen happen on the network side with this influx of data, with people streaming more potentially and just requesting higher bandwidth, lower latency communication? What have you seen at your organization?
I mean, we run about 20% of the world's internet traffic, right?
So
we see a lot. We see a lot of different conditions. We've certainly seen a lot of conditions of generative AI as that has come on. And what I think is most interesting, and this is probably why I'm so excited about what we've seen with Llama CPP and the efficiencies of that and how that's changing the systems design for how we do inferencing, because that really unlocks this capability to do a large distributed network. So that's why I care about this research. But fundamentally, looking at our core business and our core data, what we've seen is an absolute explosion, right? We're doubling our traffic every single year because of all of the data that people want. And as our services shift and change and we add new services like R2 into the mix, now you're starting to see large data loads and the desire to move people and their services to where their data is stored. So that's kind of the most exciting part about running a global network that does both network dissemination and CDNs, as well as the ability to do storage and development on top, is that we get to see, okay, wait, yes, this initiation is coming from Ashburn, but can we move this to Singapore because that's actually where their data is stored and we can be aligned to their data sovereignty model. So I actually think it's the most I get really excited about a lot of things, so this is probably not a surprising statement from anyone who knows me, but it's the most exciting time to be building a better internet because we are in the forefront of making sure it's a secure and private experience for users and for their data, and to be able to honor all of the different countries in what they want to do and help their citizens have.
Fascinating. By the way, you're in a very safe space to geek out. This is anybody over here is going to talk about networking and data loads with any of you. Garima, I want to pass it over to you. You've been at Dell for some time, and you specialize in let's be honest, data and the systems that help run it. So we've seen this massive explosion. How does HPC play a role here, and how do we approach this conversation of this just enormous, these large data sets like we've been talking about?
Right. So, I think we're talking about two things here that are related, right? One's this data explosion, and then there's the sustainability piece.
Yeah,
so,
sure. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So both of them. So you're right? Like what we're calling edge and data coming in from the edge and the inference you'd need to run on the edge, like in the HPC world, in the high-performance computing world, like we've called this sensors and instruments for years. So, you have data coming off telescopes, right? That data that's coming off telescopes, you can think of the telescope as an edge device. So there's data coming off telescopes that needs to be analyzed, and that analysis determines where you're going to point the telescope next. There's buoys in the ocean that are collecting data. right? There are ships with kilometer-long streamers behind them that are collecting seismic data, so oil companies can, figure out where they're next going to drill that billion-dollar oil well, right? So that's sensor data that's being collected on the ship, analyzed on the ship. There's cryogenic electron microscopes, which are analyzing films and generating data.
Yeah.
So all of this sounds familiar, right? Like I call it edge, I call it instrument, I call it sensor. We're talking about data analysis. And now we're talking about not just edge and core and cloud, but we're talking about near edge and far edge, because you're talking about huge volumes in data and how you're going to move it. And generative AI models are large enough that they still have a reasonable compute requirement just for inference. So the edge that you're thinking of for image detection, like you have on your self-driving car, is different from like a generative AI inference, right? But again, all of it. So your original question, like how do we manage all this data? I think data movement, data management, data mobility, analysis on one piece, and then what you move, where you move, how often you move. And I mean, we've been doing this for a while already with different language. To your point about regulations, Rebecca, like HIPAA requirements, right? In the US, HIPAA requirements for patient identifiable information. You want collaborative science on, what do these patterns mean in the medical domain, biochemistry, genetics, but that has to be anonymized. So there's a scrubbing of sort that's happening before you can put this together. Plus, you need explainable AI in terms of regulation. So the data cannot be, like you can't be like, oh, this Oracle magic AI gave me an answer and I can never tell you how I got it and I might never get that answer again, right? So, I mean, these are all complexities of handling the data, what the workflow is and so on. So long answer, but my take on that. And you know what, like this panel is, like we're agreeing with each other so much, we're gonna have to find, okay, no, because that's when it gets interesting. But sustainability, it's hard to disagree on sustainability. I think the only thing we might disagree on is the priority to do things. But I think the sustainability angle, like, I said I work for Dell. Dell's publicly announced 2030 moonshot goals. We have sustainability goals we've announced as well. And for all of us in this space, right, you look at the power it takes to train an AI model, and you're like, really, we blew through that much power? Like, but yes, we're advancing human science. So I think sustainability takes multiple angles. Standardization, huge piece. You may not think about it, but like OCP standard racks, OCP standard servers, that's a sustainable piece because you can plumb your data center for 10 years. Okay, maybe not 10, 7, but at least not 2, so that you're not swapping out gear that frequently. You can put different infrastructure in to support upcoming workloads. Oh, there's this huge explosion of generative AI. I need different sort of compute, right? How do I get that compute into that same rack? How do I have my power plumbed such that I'm not like stripping out and redistributing power through the data center just to accommodate this? How do I get energy efficient servers, right? How do I redo the software piece and the networking piece to get more energy efficient? So I think sustainability at all points, every one of us, right? It's not just somebody else's problem. Like, where do I source my energy from? Like, is that sustainable? So I think all these things in all of our portfolios, right, no matter where we play, like all of this needs to come together so that we can claim as an industry, like, this is a sustainable model.
I think this is all brilliant. I'm going to ask you a quick follow-up question because I feel like we've got this little trend going. Shweta, you mentioned how you can do at 5.6 kilowatt hours, 200 streams. You mentioned how you've seen your internet traffic double every 2 years. What's happening at Dell, Garima? These past couple of months, I mean, again, remarkable traction with things like AI and ChatGPT, but within your organization specifically, has there been a shift in focus? You mentioned Moonshot. What are you focusing on to handle all this data?
Right. Okay. So, like, it's not a shift as much an acceleration of the strategy, right?
Yeah, there
so,
we go.
right. And so,
just press the gas harder.
as simple as that. Yeah. So there's multiple angles here, right? Like, there's the eat your own dog food. Like, what does Dell Digital do, right? And there are people from Dell in the audience here because, like, we run data centers across the world. multiple geographies, moving data across. So eat your own dog food. What are we doing inside of Dell itself? There's how are we enabling our customers across the scale, right? Like we're talking from, small and medium business, though, like nobody wants to be a small business, right? It's their biggest business. But small and medium business, all the way up, to supercomputing, federal Department of Energy, huge, huge systems. We're talking systems that run in megawatts. Sorry, but so we're talking about all of that, and no longer do you have. I mean, you didn't, but no longer do you have like, okay, this is the model that works for everybody, right? And this is the model that will work from edge to core to hybrid multi-cloud. No, so those are the parts that we're accelerating, and the key again there is standards. How do these things interface with each other? And what's the best solution for the best space? So yeah.
I think that's such a good answer, Bill. Is we're not changing anything; we're just going faster. I think that's a really great answer. We have just a few more minutes left here, so I want to start with some final thoughts here. I'm not surprised we had a great conversation. I'm not surprised I threw in some curveballs. You all are wonderful. I want to leave our audience, right? A part of the reason why this conference has been so successful, why we had a record-breaking crowd and all that, is because we leave our folks here, everybody in the room, with something to think about, a little nugget, right? And I want to make sure that, given everything that we've discussed, that we leave something for the group to reflect upon so they continue leading this industry. You mean your top 3, your top 2, whatever it is you want to think about here. Rebecca, I'm going to start with you here. What are some key points that you want to impart on our audience here that they can take back to their industry and organization, obviously from your perspective at Cloudflare, where they can make a change, make a difference, or just accelerate and be more prepared for what's happening?
So step 1, I think the sustainability topic we just talked about. What are you doing to adopt methodologies that lead to modularity, to increase your reuse, to be able to reduce your embodied carbon in your manufacturing line through to your operations, right? As hardware person, I think a lot about the embodied carbon, but the vast majority of carbon usage is in actually how we operate. And we are not seeing enough sources of green power. We are not seeing enough sources to help us continue throughout the industry to be able to do that work effectively. So being open about that, being honest about that, participating in the standards around Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions reporting. How do we get to a place where consumers can actually know what they're choosing? I think that's all on us. There's no way, if I can't understand where I'm sourcing my power for the co-location facility I'm operating in, some part of Saskatchewan, I don't actually have a good sense of my operational power footprint. So my Scope 3 is your Scope 1 and 2, and that means we have to be able to talk the same language and communicate together. So we are here, and we need to be here, given what I want my little boys to inherit in this world, and I think all of us do. So that's one, like get on it, start thinking about these things. How do we make sure we're doing the work rather together? OCP, obviously, thank you for the shout out to OCP. I'm the OCP chairperson, full disclosure. I think all about this all the time in terms of how we run these standards and how we operate together to do this better. We need your support, we need your participation so that we can actually operate better together. Step 1. Step 2. You should think about the security of your data. You should think about the privacy of your data. I actually believe large cloud players invest quite heavily in the domains of security, red teaming, physical security. They run a pretty tight ship. And I think they're really working to try and make sure that there are assurances about the privacy of your data. I certainly know we take it very seriously. Any cloud player will. So as much as I believe in hybrid, I also believe we should be logical about risk. And I have a lot of faith in my brethren in the hyperscale space to be cognizant of the fact that, of course, you want your data to be private. You shouldn't expect it to be free if it's private. You should pay for that service, and we should actually work on that industry together to honor the good things that our people need. And then the last area that I think we all need to think about is how do we continue to innovate? How do we take this 10x scaling of compute requirements that is happening, that is making us all hit the gas on every aspect of high performance computing and thermal design, and how do we actually get smarter about that? How do we downsize that? How do we scale that? How do we work in open source software communities to continue to be more efficient, to create these generative AI models that are more specific for inferencing in a domain that is actually what you need? How do we move the compute closer to the data so that the networks we're designing don't inundate? There's only so much fiber in the world. How do we make sure we do that together effectively? How do we push things closer to the developers so that they can tell us what they need and so that we can actually make that happen to be aligned, again, with regulations and with the expectations of our users? That is what we all need to work on together as a team, and it's going to start with standards.
You're going to get some fans here around OCP. I actually love the circular economy conversation. So if you go out to the expo hall, you're going to have I wish I could see. I know a bunch of OCP people are in here. OCP people are in here. There we go. So you're going to have some folks come by and make sure they mention something. Garima, I'm going to ask you that same question. Some really good thoughts, again, obviously from your expertise in working with these high-density, high-performance computing ecosystems. What can you impart on our audience here? Help us blur those lines.
Right. So I'm going to flip it a bit. I think like we all have to keep each other honest, right? Like I think Rebecca touched upon this a little bit, which is, it's just not like, hey, this is Garima's top 3, but it's like, what do you need from us? What do you need from Dell? What do you need from other players in the ecosystem? Like we've all talked about, like this is not one person's problem. How we sustain this model, how we keep this pace of innovation, and how do we do it in a sensible manner, both from an ethics, privacy, sustainability point of view, right? So, tell us what you need. Tell us what you want us to do differently. Tell us what your problems are, and we all need to be talking about this, right? So that's one piece of it. The other piece, and I think the more and more, right, the problems that we're solving in one domain are very, very applicable to another domain. So, in the high-performance computing world, we've been building tightly integrated systems, running like, thousands and thousands of servers with compute, storage, networking, software, serviceability, and, parallel applications, managing load, megawatts of power being consumed to run different types of workload, let's say scientific workload, but not only scientific workload. Like these problems are similar to whatever computation you need to solve in different parts. So I think there's a lot of leverage across this. So I think that's a huge place to explore, right? Like OCP racks, not just, for cloud, right? Like there's a lot of other places where we can talk about it. Standards, we've been diving to industry standards and network and storage, APIs, all of that piece. So I think there's a lot of overlap, adjacencies that we shouldn't be solving the same problem again and again. And yeah.
No, that's
great.
great.
I feel I've been talking a lot.
Well, I'm a big fan of a circular economy, so again, that's something that we're gonna be discussing, I'm sure, in our industry quite a bit more. And let's get some OCP servers into some data centers. I think that's a great idea. Shweta, I'm gonna wrap up here with you. What are your thoughts? What can you impart on everybody? What do you think?
Yeah, so I get to bring it home.
Love it.
I'm going to break it down into 3 levels of impact, right? So first one is community or the world at large. What can you do? And to me, the sustainability story resonates a lot there. And it's more about like, can you walk the walk? Or are you just talking the talk? So like, for example, Equinix increased the operating temperature of the data center across the world. That's the thing you could do, which can actually make an impact on the bottom line. And then there are many more things, like she talked about supply chain attribution of how your emissions are calculated or measured. These are problems that people in this room can help solve, right? And it's a huge one. So the second one is at your organizational level, right? It's everyone's responsibility to think about efficiency. We are in a world where efficiency matters, not just for saving cost, for being more innovative, doing more with less, but also for our future generations. And how can we take the responsibility to build the architectures, solutions, and innovations that we do in a way that efficiency is baked into it versus it's an afterthought. And the last thought I want to leave you all with is at the human level, at a personal level, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So the ethical part of the AI, and I want to share a personal story here. I was trying one of the portrait generators in AI, right? And I paid $20 to get 100 images, and I was talking to one of the AI experts. Not even 2 images matched how I looked, because there's just not enough data points for South Asian skin tone to feed the training model. So the question I ask myself is, as this thing explodes, what are the biases that are going to be reinforced? How are we going to make AI more inclusive? So at a human level, it's our responsibility to think about that and help make it better. So that's what I would leave this audience with.
Wow, yeah, leave it at the human level. That's actually wonderful. We had a really wonderful conversation. I want to thank each of you, Rebecca, Garima, Shweta, for coming here and speaking with us and obviously enlightening everybody. Big round of applause for our wonderful keynote speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Oh. All right. All right. Don't go yet. Okay. Nobody's leaving. Okay. That was an absolutely. Again, we had a couple of questions that I had to ask that weren't even in the queue. All right, we're almost ready to start the day. I'm just still. Is everybody else still processing? Like I'm still thinking about all the things that people were saying up here. Like I need a minute. Okay, that's good. All right. As many of you know, AFCOM has actually spent about 40 years. Wow, 40 years empowering individuals and organizations that build, design, operate, and support and manage data centers and IT infrastructures with industry-leading insights, education tools, and professional networking. I'm actually really excited to bring up this next person here. Today, we're going to have our AFCOM Association Manager, Alicia Schaap, to brief us on the latest and most amazing AFCOM offerings. Alicia, coming up.
Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to share the progress that AFCOM has had since we last met here in Austin. Last year, we shared that AFCOM is moving into growth after a few quieter years during the pandemic. And today, I am excited to share that in 2022, our membership revenue grew over 47%, and growing in all of the areas that we need to grow with younger industry professionals, more diverse backgrounds, and new industries across our data center ecosystem. We've done that by listening to our membership and becoming more efficient in our business practices, as well as increasing our focus on how and what we deliver to our members. Our members-only webinars continue to see increased attendance, and we've added new features and more relevant content to our AFCOM Weekly Inside the Box newsletter to provide membership with practical solutions to help make better decisions for your businesses. In addition, we also launched a new platform for AFCOM in 2022, which allows a more user-friendly interface to access all of these resources. On Thursday, tomorrow, we'll be continuing to our Power Up program that we started here at Data Center World last year, where we'll be hosting almost 40 local high school electrical technology students, learning about the variety of professional opportunities available to them in the data center. These students are primarily from underrepresented populations, continuing our goal to increase diversity and inclusion within AFCOM and all of our data center communities. But really, our AFCOM chapters are who have continued to be the strength of our organization and continue to come together and provide educational content and networking opportunities to support our local communities. In January, we hosted an Eastern Regional end user happy hour where we welcomed nearly 200 end user attendees representing several of our Eastern and Mid-Atlantic AFCOM chapters in the heart of Data Center Alley in Northern Virginia. We saw an exceptional presence of our younger professionals again, women in the data center, and more underrepresented demographics in technology in our data center industry. There's a lot of work left to be done, but we have a lot of momentum on our side and progress, and we continue to support the future of our industry. Our AFCOM Potomac chapter, which is launching the 6th year of its AFCOM internship program, is bringing 20 interns to their local data center communities this summer. We are continuing to expand that model developed by them with other AFCOM chapters across the country,
North Carolina hosting interns for the second year, and new programs launching this year in Phoenix, Dallas-Fort Worth, and more to come in NorCal, Silicon Valley, and Minnesota, and others on the horizon. To contribute to the growth of our programs, AFCOM is working to provide additional support to more chapters struggling to get their communities back together post-pandemic, and also launching chapters in areas in the US where, as well as internationally, where they're currently not represented. To do that, we need support from data center practitioners and from you all to help in those areas to provide leadership to our AFCOM chapter boards. If you're interested in finding out more about how you can be a leader in your communities or get involved with your local chapter in other ways, please stop by and see me or any of our other staff or other local chapter board members who are here at our conference this week in the Expo Hall in the Data Center headquarters booth. I thank you all so very much and have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Alicia. Please be sure to stop by the Data Center World headquarters booth that's over there to learn more about AFCOM, how you can become a member, and how you can contribute and do some more fun stuff with us. Oh my goodness. Are you all ready for another fun day? Is everybody ready for another fun day? Well, you know, coffee? I woke up at like 6 a.m. here, and I'm excited about this day. Come on, are you ready for today? All right, that's a little bit better. We've got another fun, full day for you all. It's going to be amazing. I wasn't kidding. There was a waterfall in the Expo Hall. And if you haven't seen it yet, please do check it out. There's a lot of things happening in the Expo Hall. Really quick, we've got the Passport to Prizes. So make sure that you check it out. It's supposed to be up there, but eventually it'll make it up to the screen. Passport to Prizes. Who doesn't like to win money? And all you need to do is visit the amazing exhibitors, get your cards stamped, and you're going to get a chance to win something really cool. Winners are going to be announced at 12:40 on Thursday at the Data Center Live Theater. That's going to be just over there. That's where we did the rack and stack competition, actually. So make sure you walk around the booths, get your cards out, get them stamped, and win some cash. Today, right, is today Wednesday? Today is Wednesday. We are going to be doing this at the Expo Hall. It's going to be the Solution Spotlight. Yours truly is going to MC it, so I'm going to try and save my voice a little bit. We are going to be having several Solution Spotlights being presented as key industry innovators. And this is a great way to go out there, learn about what's happening in solutions, and a lucky attendee is going to win $100 at each one of those sessions. So be sure to check out Enchanted Rock, Dassault Systems Legrand, Sumitomo, Electric Lightwave, and Lightyear in the Expo Hall today. Definitely come out. It's just going to be fun to hear about what these folks are doing. I had a sneak peek. You don't want to miss it. It's a fun conversation. All right, clearly I hit the espresso bar yesterday because I haven't slept in 3 days. So today we're going to give me even more sugar with donuts. I'm just kidding, please have some. Come by, it's going to be, it's Fat Donuts, actually an Austin favorite. Today from 11 to 1:30, it says until supplies last. It's until the donuts last. That's what the supplies are. So come by and be sure to check it out. And then obviously we've got our third annual Innovation Challenge. Again, like the Shark Tank of Data Center world. We've got our own judges. We've got our own wonderful people and competitors, obviously, as well. It's going to take place today at 5:05 to 6:30, and the winner's going to be announced tonight at the conference party. So be sure to come by, check out the presenters. You never know, you might be enlightened by something really cool. And on that note, talking about the winners, the conference party is today 7:30 to 10:30 at Clive Bar. I was there last year. It was so much fun. The food was really good. The music was wonderful. And you know what was the best part? You all were there, and we had a chance to hang out and have a good time and enjoy the music and the food. Again, the Innovation Challengers are going to be announced there, so please bring your badges to the event. One final thing, don't forget, use that application, connect with people, get on social media. I think at this point, all of you maybe have sent me a LinkedIn invite. Good job. But again, please make sure that you're leaving feedback for the sessions that you're attending. It really, really helps us make this conference better. I do believe that is my last slide. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the sessions. Enjoy the Expo Hall. Get out there, you all. Have a wonderful day, everybody.